I just want to briefly talk about the interphone study because that was the biggest epidemiology study that's ever been conducted. It was conducted in 13 different countries under the same protocol in such a way that you can combine all of the results. This study was bigger than all the other case control studies combined. So it was a very important study, and WHO initiated this study after we started looking at RF fields and saying we really need to have some good studies on epidemiology. And so IARC, as the Cancer Research Agency of WHO, got sponsorship for this study and got 13 countries involved to have one of the most massive epidemiology studies that you could. They found, and the results took some time to come out, they found that there was no increase in risk in glioma or the meningioma for mobile phone use greater than 10 years, or 10 years. But there was some indication of an increased risk in glioma in the highest exposure group mobile phone use. And it was an indication, and it was an unusual indication, because if it was what we call a dose response curve, as you increase the use of mobile phone, you would expect that the incidence of brain cancer would go up. But what happened was there was nothing, there was a blip, and then nothing. So this was an indication. So there was a lot of study went on that. And what happened was they found that the mobile phone users in the highest exposure group were exaggerating their exposure. Now what happens when an epidemiology study tries to find out how much you use your mobile phone, they have a questionnaire, and the questionnaire says, how often did you use your mobile phone 1 year ago? And how many times did you use your phone 10 years ago, or 15 years ago? Well, I don't know how accurately you can predict how often you used your phone 10 years ago, but it's probably not very accurate. People don't remember how much they used their phone a long time ago. And what happened, they did a study which tried to validate when someone said they used the phone twice a week 5 years ago. They did a study in 4 countries where they asked the question of people with cancer and people without cancer. How many times did you use your phone 5 years ago? They collected the answers, and then they went back to the operator records to find out how often they really used them, because the records were still there. And they found there was a bias. And the bias was in the people that had cancer. Those that had cancer were asked the question, how often did you use your phone? They knew it was a mobile phone study, they had a brain cancer, and so they tended to exaggerate what they used because they thought, well, maybe the mobile phone caused my brain cancer. So when they checked the records, they found that people that had cancer exaggerated. And in some cases, when you looked at the original study, some people said they used the phone 12 hours a day for 10 years. It's probably unlikely that they did. And so when you get answers like that, it causes a false positive result. So this indication that I mentioned in the 10% high exposure group of an increased incidence of glioma was because they recalled their amount of usage, which was exaggerated. It was a bias. We call it recall bias. And you can't do anything much about it. You can try and cut down and say, look, that's not possible, so we'll eliminate those. Where do you stop? This is what they said, and they had to put that result down. But all of the authors knew it was a false positive result because of this recall bias. And this is one of the problems that epidemiology studies have. So when you have to do a health risk assessment, you look at all the problems that could occur with the epidemiology studies, and then see, in the animal studies, are we finding any cancers in animals? Or in the cellular studies to find out, is there any mechanism by which this could occur? And they're uniformly negative, which indicates there's some problem with the epidemiology study. And reviews that have gone on since the IARC classification have shown that none of the major national authorities believes that the cell phones establish any head cancer or any other health effect. I should add that WHO has recently, as 20th of September, put onto their website saying brain cancer from cell phone is not established, or any other health effect from mobile phones, which is a very solid statement from the peak health body in the world. So IARC had this classification of 2B because there was this indication in this big study, which they probably knew that there was a recall bias causing it, and they admit it could be due to recall bias. And there was another group of studies by Hardell's group, which he always comes out with a positive study, and virtually all the rest of the people come out with a negative study. So there's something wrong in that group. But it was a second positive study, and if you have two positive studies in epidemiology, it doesn't matter what happened with the rest of the science, it's classified as a 2P carcinogen. Now, IARC did a naughty thing. It started saying that there's a possibility of brain cancer from mobile phones, which is more a public health message. It's one that IARC is not a public health agency. WHO in Geneva is a public health agency. And within 1 month of this classification, WHO headquarters issued a fact sheet saying that cell phones do not cause brain cancers. It's not established. The IARC conclusion really means that, look, there's some indication, very weak evidence. We need some more research. That's what they should have said. We just need more research, because it's an agency that is assessing the scientific literature. What is the state of the scientific literature? And that's exactly what it should have said, but it didn't say it that way. And they've been roundly criticised by all the national authorities for not explaining properly what this 2B classification was. Because 2B classifications have come for when they checked out coffee, pickled vegetables, all these things that we probably use every day. It's possibly carcinogenic because there's some weak studies saying that it might have occurred. And so something like this is concerning people unnecessarily, and that's the problem. So it merely needs more research is needed, and the more research is needed in children, because it's essentially established now that adults will not get brain cancer from use of mobile phones, but we don't have enough information on children. They're the ones we want to have more information. Now, you can't put kids in the lab and check them out like that. You've got to do studies that are non-invasive. So there are some studies ongoing at the moment on children, looking at children's use of mobile phones in big cohort studies, big epidemiological studies. They're looking at children over a period of time to find out if there's any increase in cancer, because kids as small as 3 are using mobile phones now. And there have been a couple of results come out which have indicated no, they're not showing an increased incidence of cancer. Also, the animal studies, and the animal studies are done in such a way that you can relate the results to children. you get a group of rats or mice, expose them 24 hours a day, get them to mate, have their offspring, keep exposing, the offspring become mature, mate, look at the offspring, exposing them all the time to see if there's any adverse effect. And there's 3 or 4 studies have come out and found no adverse effect, which is reassuring that kids are probably not more sensitive to EMF than adults. There's a fact sheet on this, and it's shown here, and you've got a handout. There's a fact sheet that WHO has produced, and you just go to the WHO website. It's who.int/EMF, and you go into fact sheets or publications, fact sheets, and you'll get any number of very clear, concise summaries of scientific evidence and the recommendations of WHO and the conclusions about that particular device, like a mobile phone, like wireless base stations, like power frequency fields, like radars, microwave ovens. They're all there, and they're all current. Let me talk about activism for a little while. There's been a huge amount of activism in this. Many websites are produced that produce grossly misleading information.